The Spin-off Podcast Network.
What's 2FA security on Kraken? Let's say I'm captaining my soccer team, and we're up by a goal against, Soda Springs FC. Do we relax? No way. Time to create an extra line of defense and protect that lead. That's like 2FA on Kraken, a surefire way to keep what you already have, safe and sound. Go to kraken.com and see what crypto can be. Not investment advice. Crypto trading involves risk of loss. Cryptocurrency services are provided to U.S. and U.S. territory customers by Payward Interactive Inc., PWI DBA Kraken. View PWI's disclosures at kraken.com/legal/disclosures.
Ryan Reynolds here for, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
When the Facts Change is brought to you by the Spin-off Podcast Network in partnership with Kiwibank, the bank for Kiwi looking to get ahead in business and in life. A bank that delivers expertise and banking know-how, smart advice for business owners wanting to invest, grow their business or diversify. A bank that adapts with technology through the lens of its people and customers. It is a bank with heart that is driven by its purpose. Kiwi, making Kiwi better off. Did you know that there is an amazing device in your home, even if you're renting, that could be giving you $150 a year? And if all these devices were used in this way to give you $150 a year, all of the households of New Zealand could save themselves $300 million. And this is really important, and we're in a cost of living crisis. $150 shouldn't be sneezed at. Also, it could mean that Aotearoa doesn't have to burn hundreds of thousands of tons of coal. What am I talking about? Well, get up off the couch, if that's where you are. You've got your headphones on, or you're carrying your Mega Boom or whatever it is. Go round and find out where your hot water cylinder is. It is a battery in water form that could help us solve at least part of our energy crisis and our cost of living crisis. This week on When the Facts Change, we find out how the battery in our home is not being used to store power and save us money, and how it could be. We speak to Huia Bird, who is the co-founder and CEO of Electric Kiwi, who's trying stuff out to make our electricity market more competitive, to try to reduce demand at the right time of the day so we don't have to burn quite so much coal. Also, Electric Kiwi and a whole bunch of other potential competitors could come into the market and do something capitalists don't normally like: sell less stuff at lower prices. Because ultimately, if we're going to save our planet, make sure we don't burn so much fossil fuel, and do a whole bunch of things that mean we might actually keep ourselves and the planet alive for a bit longer, we need to consume less. And that is anathema to our capitalist consumerist society. This is one way we can do it. This is how the facts could be changed. If only we used that amazing device hidden away in a cupboard that has been around for decades and decades to help us save money and burn less coal. Well, kia ora, and welcome to Huia Bird, the co-founder and CEO of Electric Kiwi. Great to see you.
Kia ora, thank you, Bernard, and thank you very much for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, and for coming into the Spin-off Studios. It's lovely to see people in person, up close and personal, talking about something I'm fascinated by, and that's electricity, for all sorts of reasons. A, I have to buy it. B, it's woven into our lives actually in a more intense way than it ever has been. You know, try living without a charged mobile phone or maybe a car. So electricity really matters. And we in Aotearoa have had this slightly janky electricity market for a long time, and things are shifting, but it seems to be very slow. So I'm curious, firstly, about the Electric Kiwi story around what you'd call load shifting demand management. This is the idea with the Hour of Power where you're able to go nuts in that hour, use a lot of power because it's free and you understand what free power means, and we all love free stuff, and then use that event, if you like, to shift things around and make money and in effect move power from one place where it's expensive and it causes prices to rise to another place. Firstly, could you tell us about the story of the Hour of Power?
Sure. So the Hour of Power is really the genesis of it was thinking about what is the easiest to understand incentive for customers to shift their load. And we started 10 years ago now in 2014, and at that time there had been a large-scale rollout of smart metering in New Zealand, and we were up to around 80% of households in New Zealand had a smart meter installed. Now, no other retailer in New Zealand was actually offering pricing which reflected the fact that we now had this half-hourly data. And we were thinking about how do we create this simple proposition which is actually based on the smart meter data. And we'd seen in Victoria in Australia that smart meter data had allowed for these type of propositions to be delivered to consumers, and they were responding to it. So we thought, let's create our own New Zealand version of that. And it was a big success, and people loved it and still love it.
And full disclosure, I'm a customer and I'm a mad high power Hour of Power user between 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning. Isaiah, our producer, is a 9 to 10. And when do you do your Hour of Power?
I'm a 9 to 10 p.m. as well.
Fantastic. So I'm interested in this because the economist in me gets very excited about using prices to change demand and supply to make them match up. And there's this fundamental problem with electricity is that everyone seems to use it at the same time, and you need to have a network which can handle the highest spike. And just imagine if we were able to smooth that out a lot more. You could produce it differently and maybe a bit cheaper. You don't have to have these peaking generators, and certainly not turning on horrible diesel or gas, just when you need it type things. And secondly, when you change the price and maybe you make it clear to people that it's more expensive between 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock at night, people might change their behaviour, and the economist's eyes light up. Oh, a price to change supply and demand. Brilliant. Equilibrium. But then it just occurred to me, if something's free, how do you avoid everyone suddenly going, right, I'm going to charge the neighbour's car and my car and my 17 batteries between 5 and 6 or 9 and 10, and then suddenly you have to buy the power on the wholesale market and then you're giving it away. So how do you make sure you make money out of that?
What we've found with our customer base over a number of years is that firstly, there's a natural ceiling to how much energy you can use in an hour, even if you really try. And we do have a fair use policy, which we've never ever enforced, but it is there probably.
See, that's the challenge.
And some people definitely take the challenge up. But what we're trying to encourage is behavioural change, similar to taking your reusable bags to the supermarket or taking your Keep cup to the cafe. So it's not about this boom and bust. It's just about more, hey, every night I'm going to start my dishwasher and my washing machine at 9 p.m. And that's a habit that I'm going to get into. I don't even need to think about it. And I know that I'm going to be reducing my energy costs, and I'm also going to be reducing my contribution to emissions as well, because I won't be, the grid won't be requiring as much non-renewable energy. And the sense of how do you, still run a sustainable business while offering a free hour, it's really about that you're able to purchase that energy at a lower price than you would for peak periods. And so therefore what you can do is you can actually, through your price modelling, you can make the price that people pay in other periods. I guess there's a trade-off. They might pay, a different price in a peak period. And so what we're actually moving to is more that time of use pricing where, hey, if you're going to use electricity at a more where the inputs are more expensive, then that might mean that your retail price is slightly higher. But overall, you'll save a lot more money by, shifting load into those off-peak periods.
Because electricity, on the face of it, is quite an old technology. Alexander Graham Bell, and, it hasn't really changed in the way it's being delivered or priced, frankly, over the decades, despite the introduction a decade ago of all of those smart meters. And despite the, ongoing innovation around batteries, around remote control of devices, and the ability, you think, to start using AI and some fancy technology to turn things on and off inside the house, to be able to store the battery that you have in your car at 2 a.m. with lots of cheap power, and then use it at 7 o'clock in the morning when you've turned the toaster and the jug on at the same time. Why has there been so little innovation?
I do think that there has been innovation at small scale, but that it comes down to incentives to innovate. So, I know that we're not going to talk about competition too much, but when you have really strong competition, you do bring in that incentive to innovate, to invest in technology, and to create efficiencies that haven't really, that impetus for innovation hasn't really been there in the New Zealand electricity sector because of the lack of competition in the sector. So that's why we are really strong proponents for market settings which are competitive, because then we believe that will really force innovation in customer offerings. And a lot of the time you'll see that the smaller retailers will bring in an innovative offering, and that will only really be copied by the larger guys once their hand is forced to do so. And it really should be everyone, constantly pushing each other to do better for consumers.
Why do you think that they don't have much ambition to take market share off one of the other 3 or 4 gentailers? Because in theory, if they did, their costs of production are broadly fixed. They can make lots of money and pay even higher dividends. So I don't quite understand what's stopping them, because they're not short of money.
Yeah, and I think, there is competition to a certain extent, but ultimately everyone's, with the big players in the market, they're quite happy with their market share because they all own a fixed amount of generation, and so they can sell, effectively match that generation through to the size of their retail book, and make really great returns for quite little risk. And obviously innovation comes with risk, and taking on more customers, potentially to an extent far greater than the size of your generation portfolio, would create a lot of risk as well. So I think for those incumbent players, the returns that they're making are, for the risk that they're taking, mean that they're not really incentivized to innovate.
When the Facts Change is brought to you in partnership with Kiwibank to help you understand the issues affecting the economy. And that's what their team of experts is here to do too. Here's Kiwibank economist Sabrina Delgado on what's happening with the labour market in Aotearoa.
Our slowing economy gives way to higher unemployment, and we're seeing tightness in the labour market quickly abating. Both a recovery on the supply side, with our surging migration boosting labour supply and loosening some very tight labour market conditions. But now a stronger narrative is coming through. As consumer demand cools, so too is the demand for labour. Firms are no longer hiring with the same gusto. Already, unemployment has started to lift from record lows, and we expect that to continue throughout 2024.
Visit kiwibank.co.nz to stay up to date with detailed economic analysis and forecasts from Sabrina and other Kiwibank experts. They take big issues from both here and overseas and make them relevant to Kiwi businesses.
Does your brand have something important to say through meaningful messaging that reaches the right audience? At The Spin-Off, we work closely with our partners to create bespoke campaigns that bring value to both your brand and our audience. If you're interested in learning more about partnering with us, email Beck, that's BEC, at thespinoff.co.nz.
Kia ora, I'm Alex Casey, Senior Writer at The Spin-Off. Next week, we'll be counting down the top 100 New Zealand television shows of the 21st century. But to celebrate the shows that were disqualified, forgotten, or just too weird, join me, Kura Forrester, Rhiannon McCall, and fellow Spin-Off writers live on stage at Q Theatre on October 31st. Prepare for a night of hot takes and cursed clips as we unearth television treasures and argue for their place in our history books. Tickets are on sale now at thespinoff.co.nz/events.
We kid ourselves in Aotearoa that we are a bunch of freewheeling, entrepreneurial, competitive, number 8 wire people. But actually, we all just want a quiet life with lots of money and to be essentially a rentier. But that's another issue. Could you paint a picture for me of what an innovative electricity market could deliver? You know, what you've seen overseas, the sorts of products that you could have with the technologies we've got at the moment, particularly with the enormous surge of low-cost batteries, panels, EVs coming from those monster factories in China. In theory, this should be a golden age of innovation, new technology, different ways to use software and hardware together to reduce our power bills and to do things better.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a number of, certainly on the consumer side, participation. All the elements are there. The technology is available. And it's the scale that's missing. It's the incentive to actually move into those areas. So with load shifting, for example, that's the first cab off the rank. You know, let's actually use grid energy when it's cheapest and greenest. So let's create, let's give informed customers, let's show them via app, and let's make them understand how much they can save by making those behavioural changes. And really that's something that can be implemented into almost any household. Some can't. Some households find it a really big struggle to shift load, and oftentimes that is aligned with vulnerable households because they have so many people living there, so in that sense, that's where having competitive markets is really, really important because you bring down those average costs. But, you know, a lot of households can really effectively use load shifting. So that's kind of your very first cab off the rank. Everyone can do it, and there's very few barriers to doing it. So that's great. And every single energy retailer should have this as part of their DNA and be really fighting hard for customers to do this. Then you get to more technology-driven approaches, which are still, as we say, absolutely available today. So one of the things that we're pushing is our hot water control. And so that's shifting when you heat your water from any peak time to an off-peak time. And if you have a hot water cylinder, it's effectively a battery. And so you are charging your battery of hot water in off-peak times. You are having your shower and then you're recharging it at another off-peak time. And that's better
And the showers aren't that cold, right?
No, they're not. 99% of people will not notice any difference unless they're a very heavy user of hot water.
And what a lot of people don't realise is that your electric water heater, in many cases, can be controlled remotely through a thing called ripple control, which was designed as a way to, avoid a blackout situation where suddenly everyone goes on. If you can turn off people's water cylinders remotely, then you can avoid one of those horrible spike and blackout moments. So why can't I, opt in to have my battery as my water heater only on between 2 in the morning and 5 in the morning instead of between 6 and 9 and still have a hot shower? Why can't I do that at the moment?
Well, with Electric Kiwi, we've currently got 3,500 customers who can do that, and we're aiming to have a lot more. There's two constraints here. One is technical, that sometimes, even though the meter is a smart meter, it won't actually be set up for this type of control. So the network can turn off hot water en masse, but they sometimes can't turn it off by household or turn it on by household. So there's a slight technical, but most of the time it is possible. And the other barrier that we've faced is that because this control can only be exercised by one party at a time, we've needed to negotiate with the networks to say, hey, we're only going to use this control when you don't need to use it for an emergency situation.
And they hardly ever use it.
No, they hardly ever use it. But you have to get over that barrier because people, it's kind of one of those things where I might need to use it though, in which we say, hey, sure, if there's an emergency, of course, please be the one to use it. So we've had to negotiate with networks and kind of educate them that we're not trying to take that control away from them. We're actually trying to share. And ultimately, it's the consumers, it's their hot water cylinder. So they should be deciding how they use it and they should get the full benefit of it.
Is there no way we can circumvent that by, sending some device to people in the post that they, whack on the side of them of the cylinder so we can get around these bureaucrats at the lines companies?
Yes, there is. And those devices aren't too costly, but they do have a capital cost there. And so the way that we've looked to implement this so far is to say, hey, well, you've got a meter on the wall, we've got this control, there's actually no investment required, and therefore all the benefit can be delivered to the consumer straight away.
Because the potential here is huge. The hot water cylinder is the biggest consumer of power in our homes. Homes, particularly now we don't have any factories left, are the biggest consumers of power. Once you take out Tiwai Point, and we've just had a couple of big factories shut down, it's houses that really matter. And particularly as we go into an era when we're probably going to be charging our vehicles at home as well in some form or another, it seems to me it's the biggest no-brainer ever to reduce our consumption simply by, ordering all the lines companies to just shift everyone over.
You sound like a great advocate and we'd love to have you.
Well,
we are having those conversations and I think we'll definitely get there, but it's one of those things that in hindsight it seems so logical and obvious the technology is there, but again it's about having the incentives and it's about maybe overcoming some reticence to give consumers a seat at the table by saying, hey, actually consumers are asking us for this. What consumers want is they want to reduce their costs and emissions. And as a retailer, it's our job to find every single way that they can do that.
But just to flip it on its head and to play the devil's advocate, capitalists are about selling more at higher prices to make more profit and pay bigger dividends and get bigger bonuses. Why on earth would a company want to sell less at a lower price?
The great thing about the energy transition and electrification is that the size of the market is going to increase so much. And so we're not scared of competition or, selling less or selling it at different times, because we know that the size of this market is going to expand exponentially with the right incentives. And so there'll be a place for, competitive, businesses delivering great returns to their investors.
Just finally, I'm super excited about solar and batteries. One of the most amazing stories in geopolitics and in the global economy at the moment is Pakistan and India's enormous and incredibly fast shift to solar panels on roofs. And, they've gone from virtually 0 to 20 or 30% of their power supply in a year just by importing shiploads of containers of Chinese-made panels and batteries. What's to stop us from doing that here as well? Because the capital costs have dropped sharply. We've got no shortage of roofs, and we actually have quite a lot of sun, just as much as large chunks of Australia, where a third of the houses do have these panels and batteries.
I think there's a few things here. Firstly, scale is still an issue for New Zealand. So we, inevitably, we're furthest from the source and we make smaller orders. So we're not going to get those really, really low prices. But as you say, it's come down measurably. The other barrier there is, so there's obviously an upfront cost. So how do we take away that barrier? And the banks have all come out in recent years with the 0% or 1% loans, but we're in a very, constraint. We're in a recession, and so people aren't really wanting to add that debt. What we've seen work really, really well in Australia, and it really just comes down to what the payback period for the technology is having consumers sign up for the battery and solar technology to be installed while also joining a retailer's virtual power plant. And so that means that they are contracted for a certain number of years. I think in Australia it's kind of 6 or 7 years maybe. They are contracted, that pays off the technology, but they're also part of the virtual power plant.
And we do have some retailers who are doing that here. But one of the real issues is so many people rent. Therefore, they don't control the house. They can't just whack some panels up and tell the landlord later and then rip them off and take them when they go, and often within 9 to 12 months because so many people have short tenancies. How do we deal with this issue of the problem of the people who are paying the bill don't own the home?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, because in the model that I just described, it is that the homeowner is the bill payer as well. And so is there some innovation that you can create where the landlord, gets some benefit from the assets, but also that the tenant gets it as well? And there's probably some kind of contractual arrangement that you could get there. But one of the issues is that we don't really tend to have long-term tenancies in New Zealand as well. So when I talk about a 6 or 7 year payback, I'm not sure what the average tenancy is, but I would suspect it's lower than that.
Hui Burt, the CEO and co-founder of Electric Kiwi, thank you so much for being on When the Facts Change.
Kia ora, thank you, Bernard.
When the Facts Change was brought to you by the Spin-Off Podcast Network, together with KiwiBank. Visit kiwibank.co.nz to find out how KiwiBank are making Kiwi better off.
Kia ora e te iwi, Te Aihe Butler here, podcast manager at The Spin-Off. If you enjoy listening to our podcasts, consider supporting our mahi by signing up to become a Spin-Off member at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
Kia ora, I'm Alex Casey, senior writer at The Spin-Off. We wouldn't exist without the ongoing support of our generous members. If you're able to, you can make a donation at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
The Spinoff Podcast Network.